Look at the best rivalry in the NBA today.
With a spectacular, what a move by Ewing! A shot by John Starks. Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move by Jordan! Both clubs going at each other. Michael Jordan and Xavier McDaniel having words.
The season ends for the New York Knicks at the hands of the Chicago Bulls.
Michael Jordan with 49 points. Here's Jordan. Oh, and Jordan all over Jeff Van Gundy, screaming at him.
And the immediate future is today, 5:30 Eastern Time for the Bulls and the Knicks. And, of course, there will be some electricity at Madison Square Garden. It's just the second meeting this season. Chicago won the first at home, 88-87, as Jordan scored the 51 points. It's a matchup of the two best records in the NBA. Marv Albert and Matt Gukas join us now for a report. Marveloso.
All right, thank you, Bob. And yes, there is a well-publicized side issue to today's game. The first time the Knicks and the Bulls met back on the 21st of January in Chicago, Michael Jordan lit up the Knicks for 51 points. A sensational all-around game. 51 points, still an NBA high for the season. And when it ended, Jordan lashed out verbally at Knicks coach Jeff Van Gundy. Michael visibly upset that Van Gundy had said Jordan uses his friendships and stature to lull some of his opponents, that he cons them. And Michael got maximum motivation out of it. We talked about this episode with Jeff Van Gundy.
Well, I really don't want to revisit that again. I've explained myself a few too many times, actually. But I would just say this is that I have great respect for them as a group. But at the same time, I have my beliefs. I've never said anything that I don't believe. I believe everything I've told people, so I'm not going to apologize for anything I've said. And at the same time, I want to temper what I say from now on, because whatever I say, I want it to go to benefit our team and not hurt our team. Whether it did or not the last game, that's anybody's guess. But I just want to make sure I temper my honesty a little bit more, say what I say to help our team, and leave the rest alone.
Well, Jeff Van Gundy intended to send a message to his team, and that was, don't show too much respect to Michael Jordan. But Michael is a master at the mental game, and he turned all of that around in his favor.
And Matt, the latest on Knicks starting point guard Chris Childs, who's missed the last 5 games with a sprained wrist. He did practice yesterday, but his status for today is said to be a game-time decision. Back to Bob.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. And at halftime, we'll hear Michael Jordan's thoughts on the last meeting between the Knicks and the Bulls and Jeff Van Gundy's comments. Now, the Knicks almost always play the Bulls tough. Almost always the Bulls wind up winning, but they play them tough. What are the keys today?
Well, I'm going to talk about the New York side of things. And, they've been winning games in bunches, and Jeff Van Gundy's been employing a lot of various types of lineups. He's had a lot of success with the 3-guard rotation. But looking at the stats, and they jump right off the page, pivotal to the Knicks' success today is to play Larry Johnson at small forward for long minutes. It seems as though the Bulls have a certain vulnerability to being attacked by the small forwards.
Now, Pete, with the Knicks playing well of late, Patrick Ewing has averaged 28 points in the last 8 games, shot about 50% from the floor. Why is he getting more offensive opportunities?
Because opponents are afraid to double him. In the past, they were wide open. They had only Starks to worry about. But now they've got 5 guys that they have to pay attention to, 4 and Patrick Ewing. You got 4 outside shooters. Larry Johnson, as Julius said, has stepped up his game. Allen Houston, Charles Oakley can hit the outside shot. And Chris Childs might be their biggest clutch shooter. So he's going to be freed up a lot more down low, Patrick. But Phil Jackson told me a couple hours ago that, yes, he does not like to double on anybody, particularly Patrick Ewing, but at some time tonight, he's going to have to go to him so the others don't get off early and often.
All right, a game to look forward to, the Knicks and the Bulls, 5:30 Eastern Time from the Garden. Before we go to a break, the basketball world was saddened this past week by the passing of former AB.
For 51 points as the Bulls edged out a narrow victory. What will Michael do this time when Eastern Conference foes renew their rivalry in the Big Apple? Game 2 of our NBA on NBC doubleheader coming up next. This is the Prudential Halftime Report, brought to you by Prudential, bringing strength and stability to America's families through insurance, healthcare, real estate, and financial services.
With Peter Bessie and Julius Irving, Bob Costas back in New York. As most of you know by now, the Bulls and Knicks will be the doubleheader game. That'll tip off at about 5:30 Eastern Time. Chicago, of course, has the best record in the NBA. And the Knicks, surprisingly, have the second best. In the only other meeting so far this season, back in January, Michael Jordan got 51, and the Bulls won, but by only a point. Knicks coach Jeff Van Gundy made a few comments that may have fired up Jordan. Ahmad Rashad got Michael's response.
I try to make the game perfection. I try to make it a perfect game for myself.
His way is to befriend them, to soften them up, to try to make them feel like he cares about them, and then he goes out there and physically tries to destroy him.
Van Gundy said that I was a con man, which I've never seen con man used in a polite or respectful way.
For some reason, league-wide, it's important to be liked by him. I have no idea why.
You take negative criticism I take it in a positive way to go out and prove a point.
I'm sure that Michael will use this for motivation.
Right around the screen, Scott. Top of the circle jumper. MJ has really got it cooking. Fakes a couple times, fades, fires. You bet. Long jumper. 51, and he goes yes. And he looks at Van Gundy when he does it.
You know, I compete harder with my friends more so than with my enemies, and I don't think Magic Johnson laid aside and let me win a championship in 1991 because we were good friends. When you see me maybe joking and kidding around with some of the players, sure, I want to create friends so that the stigma of Michael Jordan being such a dominant player and such a respected person that it doesn't infringe an individual coming up and being a friend to me. I want people to view me as a person, but yet, when we step on the basketball court, I want them to challenge me as a basketball player.
I just think Michael is gone to becoming a jump shooter, and I don't think he puts himself in the body situations where you can knock him around a little bit and be physical with him.
For these criticism, I think a lot of the times it's the motivation for their players to give themselves up or raise their level of intensity towards me. Defense don't allow me to drive. They give me the outside shot. If you look at most of the scouting reports in the league, a lot of teams will say, well, force him left or make him take the outside jump shot. By no means are they going to give me a direct lane to the basket. If so, I would go to the basket.
You talk about motivation and finding different kinds of motivation. Well, it's not going to happen a lot where coaches are going to say these kind of statements to motivate you. Where else do you find the motivation?
In the course of the game, within myself, challenging myself. You play a team that's not, above 500. It's a natural tendency to have a letdown. So the challenge is, don't go with the natural tendency. Let's go opposite of the tendency. Or if you want to get individually, maybe I get a triple-double.
Here's Jordan with an opportunity. There it is, triple-double from Michael Jordan. The first ever in the history of the NBA All-Star Game.
It's always something, somewhere I can find that challenge. And once I find it, then I'm in the flow of the game. I'm in the thought process of the game.
Come on, I'll give you a jump shot right now. I'll give you a jump shot. Shoot it. Well, you don't want it.
The game has evolved to be more of a mental challenge for me than a physical. And that's one of the reasons that I still play the game, because I can challenge myself mentally.
Well, Pete, this guy, speaking of Michael, has 4 rings. You get the feeling he'd like to have 44. Maybe you have to go back to Bill Russell to find a guy who wasn't satisfied, championship after championship, and still wanting more like this guy.
I totally agree. There was nobody tougher mentally than Bill Russell until Jordan showed up. Russell willed the Celtics to 11 titles in 13 years. Jordan searches for some thought, word, or deed from an opponent or an opposing coach to rev himself up. Bird did it differently. He would trash talk an opponent, stir them up, incite them, make them play harder so they would make him play harder.
even if you're blessed with magnificent talent like Jordan, you can't be this great for this long if you don't adapt.
You definitely have to adapt. You have to adapt your game. You have to adapt your lifestyle. You have to adapt your attitude. And Michael has been in flight for 12 years. He's the best player in the game today. But Bob, clearly, you know, now he knows. He used to say in his 20s, I don't want to be out there at age 35. It doesn't look right. But we can't imagine him not being out there past the age of 35. He's going to go through the emotional roller coaster ride. He's going to put on the ice bags. We're not talking about the NBA being a players' league. We're talking about the NBA being Michael Jordan's league.
Coming from Dr. J, that's about as strong an endorsement as you could possibly ask for. When we come back, we'll update you on a busy afternoon in the NBA. But first, a message from Prudential and a word from the